Welcome to the Workplace Wellbeing Essential Series. I'm Mari Ryan. I'm the CEO and founder of Advancing Wellness. It's my pleasure to welcome you today to this expert interview where we explore topics that impact employee well-being. My guest today is Sara Johnson. Sara, as co-president and CEO, leads the business development and strategy initiatives for pro-change behavior systems. Sara brings to her role over 20 years of experience developing behavior change solutions in a variety of domains, including weight management, smoking cessation, medication adherence, and medical education. She has been the principal investigator on over $6 million of research in National Institute of Health grants to examine the effectiveness of trans-theoretical model-based interventions. She is currently leading new research initiatives to integrate individual and culture-level interventions to enhance well-being, increase engagement with evidence-based mobile apps that promote behavior change, and to develop interventions for pain, self-management, sleep, and financial well-being. Dr. Johnson also serves as the co-editor of The Art of Health Promotion in the American Journal of Health Promotion. She received her Ph.D. in clinical psychology from the University of Rhode Island and is currently an adjunct faculty member to the psychology department. She has nearly 40 publications, including refereed research publications, book chapters, and published reports. Sara, I'm so excited to have you here as my guest today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Well, today we're going to explore elements of behavior change, clearly something you're very familiar with and done a lot of research on. And behavior change programs are so common as part of workplace well-being programs. And yet many folks that are designing these programs struggle with them to really make them effective and to really create long-term and effective behavior change. So let's explore a little bit about why is behavior change so hard?
Well, it's an excellent question, Mari, and I think we've all had that experience both personally and professionally, that behavior change can be super challenging. And I think that's in part because we're often so hard on ourselves and on our participants with the expectation that everyone is prepared to change and that a one-size-fits-all intervention will be equally effective for everyone. When in fact, we now know that people vary tremendously in their readiness to make a change, and that in fact, tailored health behavior change interventions are much more effective.
Excellent. All right. Well, so what is the science behind behavior change then?
Well, I think there's no shortage of science behind behavior change. We draw heavily from the trans-theoretical model of behavior change, which is, of course, one really robust and leading model of behavior change. But we also have a number of other models and theoretical frameworks that inform the evidence that we use. So, for example, we rely heavily on principles of motivational interviewing and self-determination theory, as well as other communication models and frameworks, such as principles of persuasion and Cialdini's more recent work on principles of persuasion. And if you haven't read that book, I'd highly recommend that one. And then we add to that really well-established models about employee engagement, and all of those things together really provide a really robust foundation and a nice series of best practices that can truly inform the development of effective behavior change interventions.
Well, with all those different elements of science, it certainly helps us understand why behavior change is so complicated.
Exactly.
So many different dimensions from which it can be examined.
Absolutely. So many different frameworks from which we can draw.
Yeah. You know, I can remember when I first came to the field of worksite health promotion, which was over a decade ago, I first learned about the trans-theoretical model of behavior change. And it just made such good sense to me, you know, that everybody isn't ready at exactly the same time. But, you know, taking that and translating that into programs that can really help address the different stages of readiness is a whole different, you know, approach. I mean, it's really something that's very different and for some folks, difficult to do.
Absolutely. And I think that's an excellent point. First of all, a lot of people are familiar with what is intuitive about the model, and that is this concept of readiness to change. but there is so much more happening under the surface because stage is just one of 15 variables that's incorporated into the model that really draws from so many theories and models of behavior change. So it's the intricacies of the interrelationships between stage of change and those other behavior change variables that helps create that individually tailored behavior change guidance that's so successful. So that's a really important point about the complexity of the application. And you have to add to that too, you need really large data sets of previous program participants to do the statistical analyses to determine which behavior change principles are in fact most important at a particular moment in time and to what extent they need to be used so that we can develop the artificial intelligence that's operating on the back end to really provide the exact right message at the right moment for participants. And in fact, often what we see is people unfortunately unintentionally misusing the model. So rather than using it to be all-inclusive and develop population-based interventions, we've seen some folks use it to screen people out of interventions. And I can see that the appeal of that, we would really encourage people to use the model to be inclusive and to think about how we can tailor messages rather than exclude people from the programs they so desperately need.
So let's talk about that. So is there a different approach for people at the different stages of change? And can you give some examples of what those might be?
Absolutely. So for example, early on when individuals are in pre-contemplation, they may be using defenses like denial, or they may be demoralized about their past failed change attempts. I've tried quitting smoking 100 times. I've tried every diet and I've been unable to lose weight. Or they may be completely unaware of the problems. Think of behavior like sleep, for example, where so many Americans are completely unaware of what a huge health issue that is for them. So there can be any one of a number of reasons people are in that not yet ready stage. And some of the most important principles there would be things like raising the awareness of the important benefits of changing a particular health behavior, or providing information or sharing stories that activate emotional arousal. So stories of inspiration of people who were once where this participant now is and who've been able to successfully adopt or change a health behavior. Whereas once individuals are further along that stage continuum, think about the action stage, for example. We're really heavily relying on behavioral processes of change. So we're thinking of things like setting up a support system and modifying your environment and using substitutes, all of which are really common behavior change strategies, but are really much more appropriate for someone in a later stage.
Excellent. All right. Really good description there. Thank you. Appreciate that. So what role can employers play in helping employees change behavior for the long term? Because we hear a lot about, the effectiveness of some programs for short-term behavior change, but it doesn't stick. So what's the secret to the long-term change?
Well, I think one secret is to really think critically about the individual health behavior change programs that are being offered. So to look for high quality, evidence-based, theoretically grounded behavior change programs that really incorporate best practices of behavior change. And then to surround those with a culture of well-being that's very intentional and very supportive. So that, for example, if there is some sort of health behavior change program available, there isn't someone looking sideways at employees for participating in it, that there's a supportive culture that promotes work-life balance, that promotes social connection, that promotes well-being, using vacation time, when being off when you're off, all those sorts of things. That really those two things need to work together and be offered in concert with one another, I think, to achieve maximal success.
All right, that's great.